Hello everyone, and welcome to Growing Greens 101. I'm Brittany DeMezier, one of the Food Systems Program Coordinators here at the Iowa State University Extension and Outreach Office in Dubuque County. And today we're going to talk about growing greens for your home garden. So we're going to start off talking about the different types of greens that are out there and how to pick out seeds that will be best suited for your garden, as well as how to start them at home and then transplant them outside and keep them growing all summer long. So without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to start off by talking about the different types of greens that are out there. Most of this video is going to focus on lettuces, but know that we'll also touch on things like kale, spinach, Swiss chard. Even though they're not in the same family as lettuce, they were also included in this packet and have a lot of similarities in their growing type and style as lettuces do. So we're going to kind of lump them in all together, but know that there are significant differences between growing a kale versus growing a lettuce. So there's four main types of lettuce. So the first one we're going to talk about today is called the crisp head lettuce. This is your traditional boring iceberg lettuce. It's going to be it's going to have a tightly formed head. And unfortunately, this type of lettuce doesn't really grow very well in Iowa. So it's really not recommended for growth here just because it doesn't like hot weather at all. And we usually don't have a long enough cool period at the beginning of our growing season to really do this type of lettuce very well. So this is one type of lettuce, the crisp head. So that's the first type, and I really wouldn't recommend growing that here. What would be a better choice would be the butterhead lettuce, and that's going to be this one right here. So see how it still has a nice head on it, but it's not as tightly compact as this one. So the leaves are gonna be a little bit more loosely formed around that head than it is with the crisp head type variety. So the types of varieties that you might want to plant here for the butterhead lettuce is going to be something called Butter Crunch or a Summer Bib or a Red Cross. This is one that I wouldn't recommend harvesting in baby leaf stage. You might be able to do that with some of these other varieties. But this lettuce really needs to wait until full maturity to form the entire head before harvest. So that's going to be about 70 days from when you transplant it outside. So this is the butterhead. Another really popular type is romaine. So this is your romaine lettuce. It's a very nice, again, tight, compact head. It is a little bit more upright lettuce. You can see the difference in type between these two. This is a lot more upright. The leaves are shaped differently. So this is its own type of lettuce. If you're going to grow romaine lettuce here in Iowa, I would recommend growing a variety called either Green Towers or Paris Island or Green Forest or one of those. So that is one for your romaine. The most popular type and the one that has probably the most options is going to be your leaf lettuce. So this is a green leaf lettuce. You can also get it in different colors like reds as well. So you can see here it's still a distinct plant, but there's no real head formed here like there is with this one. So you can see this one here has kind of individual leaves, and that's what it's known for. That's why it's called leaf lettuce. This is a very attractive type of lettuce. You can get lots of different types of leaf shapes, colors, and sizes with this one. So this is the most versatility out of all of the lettuce types that we're going to talk about. This one you can harvest in baby leaf stage. So that's about typically around 40 to 50 days after you transplant. Full size is going to be somewhere between 50 to 70 days. So that is going to be your leaf lettuce. So another type you could find is kale. Kale was also included in your packet as well. You can see here, this is actually not even in the same family as lettuce. This is a brassica. So it is more closely related to cabbages than lettuces. So this is a curly variety. There's also what's called dinosaur kale, which has longer, darker colored leaves that don't have this like curly fringe on the outside. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about spinach. Spinach forms in individual leaves just like this. So it doesn't really form a plant per se, but it will just kind of come up in individual leaves, and that's how you will use and harvest your spinach. So now we're going to talk about the different types of seeds that you might encounter when you're growing greens. So the first one that we're going to start with is our lettuce seeds. So the lettuce that you've probably gotten in your packet is called black-seeded Simpson. So this is what the packet will look like. And inside the packet are going to be small little lettuce seeds. So you can see here, they're very, very small. very kind of hard to pick up one at a time. So a lot of times if you're looking at lettuces or even carrots or other things that have small seeds, they will do a pelletized seed that will look like this. And basically what they've done is they've taken the seed and they made a clay coating around the outside of it to make it easier to pick up. So this is going to be very easy to seed one by one into your cells. So lettuce is actually a member of the Asteraceae family, which is closely related to daisies. The next one that we're going to talk about is going to be Swiss chard. This is what the seed packet will look like. And Swiss chard seeds are very different. You can see here, this is what they look like. And they're just kind of brown and kind of star-like almost. So Swiss chard is closely related to beets, actually. The next one we're going to take a look at is kale. This is what your seed packet will look like. And inside your kale seeds are going to look like this. So you've got some black. They're also going to be pretty easy to seed by hand. A little bit, you can see here, they're kind of flowing all over the place. They're very circular, but they're very easy to plant by hand as well. And the last one we're going to take a look at is our spinach seeds. Spinach is going to be closely related to amaranth. It's part of the amaranth family. And their seeds, again, look pretty different. They're going to be lighter brown, but again, pretty large and easy to seed by hand. With your spinach, I'm not going to recommend that you do spinach for transplant. This is one of those things that you want to just directly seed outside. And they can withstand temperatures down to 40 degrees. So if you want to just directly plant them outside at this point, you should be able to do so. So if you're starting to take a look at different types of lettuces to purchase, either from a catalog or online, there's a few different things you're going to want to look at. Most catalogs will give you a picture of the different types of lettuce, either the leaves or the whole plant, so you can see the size, shape, color of the lettuce so that you won't be surprised once you purchase it and start growing. This particular catalog also has a lot of great growing information in right next to where you're going to purchase the lettuce seeds. This is always good to take a look at as you continue growing throughout the season, so don't forget that you have this resource at your fingertips. This one will have information on planting, direct seeding, days to maturity, harvest, storage, and a host of other information. Another key thing to take a look at is the very last line in that lettuce box on the left-hand side is going to say packet. And for this particular company, their packet of lettuce seeds contains 500 seeds. So that's something to keep in mind as you're looking at different types of vegetables. If you're getting a packet of tomatoes, you're probably going to get somewhere between 20 to 30. But in this case, when you're getting lettuce, you're going to get close to 500 seeds. So that's something to keep in mind as you're purchasing your seed packets, to note how many seeds are actually in each packet. Another thing that you'll want to take a look at is the lettuce resistance codes. You'll see that here in the bottom left-hand corner of this page. This particular company offers disease resistance to a variety of different types of lettuce diseases, such as downy mildew or lettuce dieback complex. A lot of different options here. You'll notice, and I'll show you exactly where to look for that as you're scanning through each seed, but you'll notice there's two different types of resistance offered, either high resistance or intermediate resistance. So whenever there's disease resistance bred into the genetics of a particular plant, that doesn't mean that they're not going to contract the disease. It just means that they're not going to show symptoms as quickly as they would if they did not have the resistance bred in. So something with an intermediate resistance might have delayed onset of those symptoms by a couple weeks. High resistance might have, will be a little bit longer and might not even show recognizable symptoms at all. So that's why you'd want to take a look and see what kind of resistance is offered for different types of diseases and what might be the best package for you. So on the next page, we'll break it out into each specific variety. And so you can see at the top of this page here, it does say leaf lettuce, and then it groups it by green and red. So a lot of times the different types of lettuces will be all grouped together so that you know what you're getting. They're not going to typically put head lettuces next to leaf lettuces next to romaine. They're going to want to group them with like typed lettuces. So it makes it easier for you to compare and contrast as you're going through the catalog, or even as you're searching online. So in this catalog, you'll see at the top, you'll have the name of the variety, as well as the days to harvest. And then for the very top one, if we're looking at the Grazion, you'll see that that variety has high resistance to downy mildew. And how you know that is because it says HR:DM, which stands for high resistance downy mildew. So this is a good variety if you're looking for disease resistance to downy mildew. It'll also give a quick description of the lettuce, how it might compare and be unique from the other types of lettuces that you'll find in the catalog. And then at the bottom, you'll see, the amount of seeds that you'll receive and how much it's going to cost for that amount. So as you go down to the bottom, you'll also notice a little chart. You can see here they've broken that chart out into green and red colors, so you can compare everything that's on that page to each other. You can see the days to harvest, so you can compare that, color description, tip burn, and bolting tolerance, and we'll talk about what that is later in this video. And the frame size and weight of each one, so you can kind of get an idea of how they're different from each other and what might be the best lettuce for you, or what to expect if you're getting a lettuce that has, positive traits of one kind but might be lacking in other areas. So something to keep an eye out for. You'll also see in this particular page in the middle, it says pelleted lettuce seeds. For this catalog, the pelleted lettuce seeds are all in one section. They're not sprinkled in and amongst the other types of lettuce. So like we talked about before, those pelleted seeds are going to be easier to plant by hand if you're looking to do that. So those are all going to be in a different section, in this case on page 78. So what exactly is a salad mix? We've talked about different varieties of lettuce, but salad mixes are a little bit different. So a mix is going to come in a packet that looks just like any other seed packet, but inside is going to be, just like it says, a mixture of different lettuces that will come ready and mature at about the same time. So this particular packet of lettuce has 5 different varieties in it. It's 20% Grand Rapids, 20% Salad Bowl, 20% Red Salad Bowl, 20% Oak Leaf, and 20% Flame. So you've got different types of leaves, different colors, different shapes, so that when you make your salad, it has kind of a variety of different things. What you aren't able to control with salad mix is what lettuces are planted where. So when you plant your lettuce, you're basically planting generally what's in this packet. So it might group together a little bit differently, but in general, when you're going through and harvesting, you can harvest systematically through the row and not have to cherry pick, okay, I'm going to get this green lettuce and this red lettuce and this leaf lettuce and form it all into a salad. It kind of does that already for you. This is another one that I would not recommend planting and transplanting out into your garden, but rather just direct seeding the salad mixes into your garden versus transplanting them. So now we're going to talk about how to actually start your seeds indoors. So you want to start your seeds about 3 to 4 weeks before the last hard frost date. And for us here in Dubuque County, that's going to be around May 5th. So if you back that up 3 to 4 weeks, it's going to be about the first week in April. It's going to want to be when you start your lettuce and Swiss chard seeds inside. Kale is going to be a little bit different. You're going to want to plant that about 2 weeks out from that last frost date. So for us this year, it's going to be about Easter week or that 3rd week in April. And then finally, the spinach. If you did get spinach in your packet, again, I would recommend direct seeding that right into the ground instead of doing a transplant for that one, just because it works a little bit easier to do it that way. So as we're starting to look at transplanting or planting our seeds, we're going to start off with a basic plastic, or you could even do a compostable type container like this. You're going to want to make sure that there's drainage holes in the bottom, and it's going to be something that you're going to be able to easily free those plants when you're looking to put them and transplant them into the ground. So something like this plastic where you can kind of squeeze this bottom cell to get those roots out is going to be ideal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just fill this up with some basic potting soil. Again, we've got a video on how to create your own potting soil if you don't want to get the mixes from this, some of the big box stores. And we'll go ahead and just shake that off just like that. So, and then we'll level it off here, either with your finger or you can do it with a pencil as well. And then we'll go ahead and set this here. And what I typically recommend people do is go ahead and put it in a little container of water. So I've got one started here. go ahead and put that right in that container of water. Typically, and let that soak up for about 2 hours before you start your planting process. A lot of potting soils are hydrophobic, which just means that they kind of resist water as you're starting them off until they're actually, wet and saturated. So for something like this, if you go ahead and look, if I try to water it from the top, a lot of times that soil will start to bubble up and flow off the side. And that's not ideal. So if you've got the time to be able to soak it in a container beforehand, that's going to be ideal for getting your best seed to soil contact and best chance for consistent watering as those seedlings are getting started. All right, so I've got a tray here that's been soaking for about 2 hours. So you can see it's pretty wet on the top. So what I'm going to do to start our seeds is I'm going to take a pointed object and go ahead and make an indent in those cells about 1/2 to 1/4 of an inch down. So you're not going to want to go down too far because these seeds are not very big. So we'll do that in all 6 of our cells. And just make a little indent in there, just like that. So I'm going to take our lettuce seeds, put them out into my hand here. And then this is a case where if you've got some water nearby, go ahead and take your sharp object or your pointed object and go ahead and dip that in the water, and then it will be able to pick up those seeds pretty easily for the lettuce plants. Since lettuce is harder to seed by hand, this is a good tip that I use to be able to put them in there. So you can see I got about 3 seeds on that one. I'm putting 3 seeds in that one cell. That's just in case a couple of them don't germinate, that we're getting a nice full flush in there. If all 3 of them germinate, we can go back through afterwards and go ahead and thin that out. But it's always a good idea to just kind of put some extra seeds in there just in case some of them don't grow. So go ahead and do that, cover it up, and there you go. I'm going to do a couple Swiss chard as well so you can see how those look. And again, with the spinach, you'll just want to direct seed that into the ground. Again, pretty shallow, about 1/2 inch to 1/4 of an inch down. So for our Swiss chard seeds, these are going to be really easy to pick up by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick one of those in a cell. If you really want a large flush when you are transplanting them, you can put a couple in. But typically I only do about 1 to 2 per cell. So go ahead, that seeded itself. And we'll go ahead and again cover that up. And then once you're all done, it's a good idea just to give them a quick water from the top just to make sure that they're all wet, and you should be good to go. You should start to see your seeds come up about 7 to 10 days after you've planted them. Kale's going to come up a little bit quicker in about 5 to 7 days, but overall it's going to take about a week for those seeds to start popping up out of the soil. So you are going to want to provide these seeds with supplemental light once they do come up, either an LED or a fluorescent light over the top of them, just to help get them a little bit more short and compact so they're not straining for light. If you don't put up supplemental light, typically your transplants are going to be very tall and spindly, and that's not ideal for transplanting outside. So these plants were seeded about 3 weeks ago, so you can see how big they are at this point. I would give them another week before we're able to transplant them outside, but overall they're looking really nice and healthy. If you do have the black-seeded Simpson lettuce, that is going to come up in a little bit more yellow of a color, so don't be alarmed if your seeds look a little bit not as dark, deep green as you're used to seeing. That's just part of the variety, and that's just how the color that specific lettuce looks as it's starting to sprout. And here's our Swiss chard. So the Swiss chard, I planted a couple seeds per cell. So about 2 weeks in, you're going to want to come through and thin that out. So like this one up here has got 3 plants in that cell. So you can see 1, 2, 3. I'm going to want to come through and take out 2 of those. So I'm going to pull out 1, 2, so that I'm left with just 1 plant in that corner cell there. So you can see that there. So once you've gone ahead and thinned out your seeds and letting them sit under the supplemental light, you want to make sure that that light is not shining on them for more than 12 hours a day, because it'll make it more difficult for them when they do go outside and the day length doesn't match up. So you're going to want to keep that pretty concurrent with the actual day length that you're seeing outside. So when the sun is setting, your supplemental light should be off indoors. When you go ahead and transplant these plants outside, either the Swiss chard or the lettuce or the kale, it's going to be about, you're going to put the plants about 12 to 14 inches apart in your garden space. So you're going to want to harvest your lettuce about 6 to 8 weeks after you've transplanted it outside. But check your seed packet for the days to harvest just to make sure you have an accurate count. But your lettuce, kale, and Swiss chard should all be ready about at that 6 to 8 week mark. For cut and come again lettuce, you'll want to go ahead and that's another popular thing if you're not wanting to do succession planting. So if you're going to do that, you want to take your lettuce plant, and this one was hydroponically grown, so we don't have the soil on the roots, but you can kind of see this concept illustrated. You can go ahead and cut about 1 inch above the crown. So right about here is where you'll want to go ahead and cut and harvest those leaves off, and then it should come back again in about another 4 to 6 weeks. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at some problems that you might encounter as you're growing your lettuce plants. So the pictures that you see here, the lettuce is going through a process called bolting. Bolting happens when the lettuce plant is too hot, or it's been too hot in the area for too long. The lettuce will start to go into reproductive mode and start to form flowers and eventually seeds. So the picture that you see here on the left is going to show you that lettuce plant starting to bolt, and the one on the right has actually started to form flowers and possibly even seeds. So either one of these two I would not recommend harvesting, because the leaves are going to be pretty bitter at this point. So I would avoid harvesting them, and probably pull the plant out and wait until a little cooler temperatures to start growing lettuce again. So that's bolting. Another common problem that you might find is tip burn. So this is tip burn. It kind of looks like, the leaves edges have been singed a little bit. This is a calcium or nutrient deficiency in the soil, and usually it comes from inconsistent watering. So this is a pretty easy one to correct if you can just be a little bit more consistent with your water. That will kind of clear up on its own. The lettuce in this case is usually still good to eat. It just looks a little unpleasant, and of course the edges are going to have a little bit of a crisper texture than some of the outside parts of the leaves. Common pest problem that you'll encounter while you're growing your lettuce is going to be aphids. So these are aphids. If you've ever seen these on your lettuce plants before, that's what they look like. You can see a couple different stages here. The darker ones towards the top of the picture are kind of that nymph stage, and then the lighter colored ones, the larger ones on the bottom, are going to be more the adults. You can even see some of those white parts there are going to be kind of the exoskeleton of dead aphids. So none of those are very good. If you start to see aphid issues on your plant, I'd recommend starting treatment pretty quickly after you start to see them, because they can grow pretty rapidly and they've got a pretty short life cycle. A lot of people will try spraying off the lettuce leaves to get the aphids off. That's not very effective, although it may make you feel better short term. It's not really a long-term solution. So what I would recommend if you start to see aphids is to spray a little neem oil on your plants in the evening when some of the beneficial insects that might eat these aphids aren't as active. So that'll kind of help take care of some of the aphid problems. And of course, the earlier you start spotting them, the earlier you start treatment, the better off it's going to be for everyone. Another problem you might encounter is worms or caterpillars on your lettuce. So if you start to see little chew marks, that's probably a pretty good indication that you've got some caterpillars. Or if you start to see these little black balls forming, that's another good indication. That is insect frass. Frass is another word for insect poop. So if you start to see some of the droppings from the worms, then you can pretty much assure that they're there somewhere, and you should go hunting for them. Neem will also work on caterpillars. However, it's probably best to just pick them off by hand, truthfully, because that will kind of get rid of them. And if you are using neem for aphids as well, it kind of works double duty there. So those are just a overview of a couple different problems that you might encounter as you're growing lettuce. So thanks for joining us today. I hope you learned a little bit more about lettuce and salad greens today and are excited to go off and start growing them on your own. We look forward to hearing your growing stories throughout the season, so please feel free to share those with us either through our email or on social media. We look forward to growing with you this season, and happy growing, everybody, from all of us here at Dubuque County Extension.